Hello and welcome to the LLG podcast. You're listening to Deborah Evans, LLG's Chief Executive, and Dennis Hall, LLG Bulletin Editor.
Hi everyone.
Now, council finances continue to dominate the news with the announcement that the government will introduce a host of children's social care reforms with more duties for councils amid warnings that send costs will tip councils over the edge. Now, think tank Localis has warned that ministers must show political courage and expend political capital to stop councils effectively going bust. But there's plenty going on elsewhere in the world of local government, isn't there, Dennis?
Well, yes indeed. Councils will now have the power to hold high street rental auctions from the 2nd of December after secondary legislation was laid earlier this month. And the powers, which were originally introduced by the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act 2023, are intended to allow local leaders to tackle persistently vacant properties in city, town and village centres by putting the leases up for sale, or indeed up for auction. Ministers said this would boost the high street through right-to-rent commercial lots for businesses and community groups. And they added, the move will stop disengaged landlords from sitting on empty properties for more than 365 days in a 24-month period before councils can step in and auction a 1 to 5 year lease. More than £1 million in funding will be provided to support the auction process. Before putting a property to a rental auction, a local authority must first seek to resolve the vacancy by engaging with the landlord. Local Growth Minister Alex Norris said, high streets are the beating heart of our communities, but for too long, too many have been neglected, with more and more empty lots and boarded up shop fronts. We're giving local councils the tools to take back control. High street rental auctions will put local communities first, he said, re-energising town centres and driving local opportunities and growth. Now, early adopter local authorities were unveiled at an event in Wolverhampton. They will be expected to take immediate action and work with the ministry to provide strategic guidance and best practice advice to other councils. Now, here's the question. Is your council involved in this new initiative? Get in touch with LLG via the LLG forum and tell us about your experience. Deborah.
Indeed, and it would be wonderful to hear from you. As we know, previous administrations have attempted to resolve the issue of empty homes by giving councils the power to take control of the property, but that proved very expensive for the authority concerned and perhaps wasn't quite the success that was hoped. Here, however, this initiative seems to have more legs, although the extent of legal challenge against authorities will remain to be seen. But it is at least a seemingly good step towards trying to restore our high streets. Now, sticking with property, the government's consultation on reforming the right to buy opened on the 20th of November and follows the reduction in maximum right to buy cash discounts, which you may remember was announced at the autumn budget this year. Now, the consultation asks for views on the qualifying criteria for tenants, initial and maximum discounts as a percentage of the property value, which types of properties should be exempt under the scheme, whether there should be increased restrictions on properties after sale, and the replacement of whole homes sold under right to buy, and also the rules governing the use of right to buy receipts and how these could be simplified. Now, this is another topic that we're very keen to hear from you on, in particular about those rules around right to buy receipts. Now, right to buy is always divided opinion amongst the public, but one thing we can all agree on is that there is a housing crisis which needs addressing, and it's the lack of available social housing which has pushed the agenda. And there was a great analogy by the charity Shelter on the dwindling housing stock available, and they said, to fill a bath, you can't just run the taps, you need to put the plug in too. Now, for those planning to respond, the consultation closes on the 15th of January 2025, so some Christmas thinking for you there. In other news, Dennis, you've been looking at recent guidance issued by the SRA on a very pertinent topic, so tell us more.
Yes, the Solicitors Regulation Authority has issued a range of guidance materials to support the 34,000, indeed 34,500 plus solicitors working in-house across England and Wales. The guidance is intended to address the unique challenges and issues facing in-house solicitors working across a range of employers and sectors, including, of course, local government. Topics covered include identifying the client and reporting concerns of wrongdoing. The SRA also addresses issues such as legal professional privilege, balancing ethical obligations, and managing legal risk. Our guidance for employers aims to enhance understanding of solicitors' professional obligations and strengthen the support that employers provide to help solicitors to meet them, the regulator said. The SRA added that it has made a number of changes as a result of feedback during the process of developing these materials. Juliet Oliver, General Counsel at the SRA, said, "This is the first time we have produced such a breadth of guidance for in-house solicitors." She went on, "These documents reflect the unique challenges and issues that in-house solicitors encounter in their day-to-day roles and aim to support solicitors in meeting these and to highlight the value that in-house solicitors can bring to organisations in promoting ethical behaviour and managing legal risk." The guidance includes a range of topics, but the four key ones for me are reporting concerns about wrongdoing when working in-house, and second, guidance for employers on a solicitor's professional obligations. Third, a new separate document for governing boards, chief executives, and senior officers in organisations that employ in-house solicitors. And finally, new guidance on legal professional privilege when working in-house. These materials build on issues that arose from the SRA's 2023 thematic review on working in-house, and all the key links are in Bulletin 44. Deborah.
And I think it's also a good opportunity to point out that the SRA are speaking at our governance conference on exactly this topic on December the 13th in London. So if you would like to hear more about it, ask them some questions, do come along. And it does seem that they actually see that in the worst of circumstances, your job could literally be put on the line. And the guidance, in fact, states, where wrongdoing persists despite you following all of the internal procedures in your organisation, you should carefully consider whether you can meet your regulatory obligations and continue working for your organisation. Now, just to translate that, that means you should consider resigning. And I'm sure a number of you out there will have been in exactly that situation. Now, in local government, at least, we have some protection, but it is vital that the government move forward quickly with not just sanctions, but enhanced statutory protections for monitoring officers. And these were recommended by the Committee on Standards in Public Life way back in 2019 and were agreed upon by the previous administration, but they never managed to get to the point of actually carrying on and implementing that decision. Now, returning to an earlier point I made in relation to children's social care reform, the government have announced that they will empower social workers and all those that work with children to take action against children placements providers that deliver subpar standards of care at sky-high costs to councils and focus the system on early intervention. Now, new rules will require key placement providers, those that provide homes for the most children, to share their finances with the government, allowing profiteering to be challenged. Increasing financial transparency will ensure that the providers that have the biggest impact on the market don't unexpectedly go under and leave children without a home. There will also be a backstop law to put a limit on the profit providers can make that the government will introduce if providers do not voluntarily put an end to profiteering. And this obviously all feeds back into those costs of care, which, as we know, are spiralling out of control. Now, Ofsted will also be given new powers to issue civil fines to providers, working more quickly to deter unscrupulous behaviour than with existing criminal powers. Now, Dennis, embedding good relationships between colleagues is essential for productive working environments, but as we all know, overfamiliarity can be a problem. Tell me more.
Well, that's the key question, Deborah. Here's the instance we're dealing with here. A judge has been reprimanded for sharing jokes, anecdotes, and moral lessons with a court employee. The staff member claimed that when she worked with His Honour Judge Martin Davis, who was appointed as a circuit judge in 2022, he made overfamiliar and inappropriate comments which made her uncomfortable. An investigation by the Judicial Conduct Investigations Office found the majority of her allegations were not established, but it did find that Judge Davis inappropriately and unnecessarily shared his strongly held moral beliefs with her. As his subordinate, who did not know him, she was unable to object, and it also ruled he was overfamiliar in his conversations with her, deploying ill-judged humour and an excessive number of anecdotes. Sadly, the Investigations Office didn't provide any examples according to the report in the Law Society's Gazette. Now, while his jokes and endless stories were intended to be friendly, the Investigations Office said he was not sufficiently mindful of his position of authority or the impact of his words on the court employee, and therefore did not treat her with respect. Objecting to the complaints, Judge Davis said she had misremembered or misrepresented his excellent patter and told the Investigations Office that he simply takes an interest in his colleagues with whom he enjoys conversations. But he'll be more boring now, as the Investigations Office said that, upon reflection, he had learned to be more careful when sharing personal anecdotes and views. Deborah, I think this item raises a lot of questions about office chit-chat and banter. Where and how easy is it to draw the line between a genuine raconteur and someone being overfamiliar? We usually all recognise it when we see a line being crossed, but there will surely be some grey areas around acceptability, and much will remain subjective. Deborah.
Well, I agree, Dennis, and it would have been helpful if they'd have given us some examples. We're going to have a very boring team meeting now, I tell you, but there we go. So it's clear that those in a position of authority need to be more careful. Now, emotional intelligence is a key skill here, and one that we focus upon in our LLG Inspire programme because of its importance. So finally from me, the Electoral Commission has produced a report outlining that whilst July's general election was well run and the vast majority of voters were able to cast their ballot, improvements are needed to address the difficulties that prevented some postal and overseas voters from taking part. Now, the report was based obviously on research around the 2024 UK general election and indeed the May local elections, found unacceptable levels of abuse and intimidation of candidates, with just over half of candidates saying that they were abused or intimidated during the election campaign. Now, women and ethnic minorities, sadly, were particularly targeted. So the Commission has recommended a number of improvements to the system to address these challenges. Firstly, it's going to support the Speakers Conference and offer coordinated action by a range of partners to urgently tackle candidate abuse and intimidation. Police forces and prosecutors should continue to treat allegations and cases of election-related intimidation seriously, and those committing offences against candidates and campaigners should face significant sanctions. Political parties should ensure that membership rules emphasise respect for other campaigners and take appropriate action to sanction members found to have abused or harassed campaigners. And social media and online platforms should help develop improved screening tools for candidates' digital profiles to remove abusive content and identify perpetrators. And we all know, I think, that social media can be a particularly problematic area here. Now, we know that the LGA are continuing to address the increase of abuse through their Debate Not Hate campaign, and we would urge members to keep abreast of their guidance and look at their toolkits to better support their members. So on that note, that's it for another edition of the podcast. You can read more on all of the items discussed today and many, many more besides by going to bulletin number 44, available on the LLG website now. So it's goodbye from me.
And from me too. Bye now.
Thank you for listening and have a good week.